Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Chapter 6, verses 1 to 10. Shri Bhagavanuvacha Anashritah karma phalam karyam karma karoti yaha sasannyasi cha yogi cha na niragnir na chakriyah yam sannyāsamiti prahuhu yogam tam vidhi pandava nahya sannyasta sankalpaha yogi bhavati kaschana ārurukṣormunir yogam karma karanamuchyate yogarudhasya tasyaiva shamah karanamuchyate yada hinendriyartheshu na karmasvanushajjate sarva sankalpa sannyasi yogarudhastadochyate uddharedatmanatmanam Atmanamavasadhayet Atmaiva hyatmano bandhuhu Atmaiva ripuratmanaha Bandhuratmatmanastasya Yenattvaivatmana jitaha Anatmanastu shatrutve Vartetatmaiva shatruvat Jitatmanah prashantasya Paramatma samahitaha Shitoshna sukha dukkheshu Tatha manapamanayoho Jnana vijnana triptatma Kutastho vijitendriyaha Yukta ityuchyate yogi Samaloष्ठाश्म काञ्चनः सुहृन्मित्रायुदासीनः मध्यस्थद्वेष्य बन्धुषु साधुष्वपि च पापेषु समबुद्धिर्विशिष्यते योगी युञ्जीत सततम् आत्मानं रहसि स्थितः एकाकीयत चित्तात्मा निराशीर परिग्रहः Hari Om, Namaskaram to everyone. The last we did was the 7th verse. Jitatmanah prashantasya paramatma samahitah shitoshna sukha dukkheshu tatha manapa manayoh. the Supreme One, who is self-controlled and peaceful, is balanced in heat and cold, in pleasure and pain, and also in honor and dishonor. So all through our lives, we are subjected to these fluctuations, which is the very nature, which is the attribute of the world. The world presents itself as opposites, which is the very nature of the world. It presents itself at all levels, from the material, physical, emotional, intellectual. These are the opposites that the world presents itself to us. Now, a tamasic person, or a person, as every individual has a proportion of tamas, rajas, and sattva, a tamasic person is indifferent to the extremities or the opposites of the world. He is indifferent to it. It doesn't matter to him. He lives the life of a plant. A plant doesn't respond, doesn't react to the world. The rajas is compared to an animal. An animal or rajasic state is where you start reacting to either be the success or failure or the opposites, or whether be joy or sorrow. Rajas is where you are affected by the opposites of the world. You become a victim. That's the life of an animal. You give a little love to an animal, it is excited with the love. You deny it the love and attention, it will not be able to pacify itself and say, that's life. It can never console itself and say, I'll have to do with a little less love today because my master is very busy with something. So I'll try to manage. I'll entertain myself with something else. No. You leave your dog behind. You've gone for a holiday. You couldn't take your pet along with you. You have left it with someone else or left it alone. You cannot, the dog cannot bear that separation, that loneliness. It is affected. And also the same, it can't contain itself knowing that you're back. It is so much of joy. It is jumping with excitement. It has so much of love. It can't handle love. It can't handle not being given the attention. It's affected. So when the world influences you and affects you, it is the rajasic element that is manifesting in you. And there is an element of rajas in all of us. Tamas is you are not bothered, you are indifferent to it, you don't care. That is not right. When somebody comes and shares something good to you, you don't react. When somebody comes and shares their tragedy to you, you don't react. That's a piece of a You behave like a dead wood, as they say, isn't it? You're a piece of lifeless life. It's not worth living that tamasic life. And then there is that sattvic element, which distinct difference between a rajas and tamas, as a rajas and sattva, is the life of an animal and a human. A human can feel, should feel the multitude of emotions, should able to perceive the extremities of life, whether be it praise or censure, whether be it profit or loss, whether it heat or cold, whether be it joy or sorrow, whether be it a friend or a foe, you should be able to differentiate. And yet a person of sattva, he says he remains unaffected. Which is opposite to a person who is affected by everything that comes his way. And you remain unaffected, or a sattvic person remains unaffected, because he chooses not to identify with anything that's happening. He doesn't identify with joy or identify with sorrow. He doesn't identify with profit or with loss, understanding that's the nature of life. He doesn't subject himself through these fluctuations, through these undulations. And that capacity a human has is known as to be a sakshi, to be a witness. You must try to maintain that attitude of a sakshi or a witness, where you would say, I've got nothing to do with it. So you don't identify with it. And that is determined, that is measured by your sattvic quotient. When your sattvic quotient is high, it reflects in your ability to be detached or objective. Objectivity or detachment or being a sakshi gives you the capacity where you are self-sufficient and you're peaceful. And all of us have a quotient of it, and that is your sattvic quotient. And this is the result, as I've said, he said. A person is balanced in heat and cold on all these fluctuations. He is at peace with himself. Now, when do you get this? You get to this state when you have practiced the previous verse, which said, Uddhare atmanatmana. In the 5th verse, he said, he who lifts himself by himself, one who gives the emphasis to that self-effort. When you put in that effort, then you get the fruits of that labor. That effort is where you remain unaffected, you remain peaceful. Otherwise, you will be like a feather in a summer breeze, or you will be like a neglected boat in the ocean, like a ship without a captain. You will be subjected through the undulations of life. Remember, we took the example of the boat or the ship, which is subjected through the crests and troughs, but it has those stabilizers which help to keep the ship not to roll on either side. So that capacity where you remain unaffected by these two. It's a very powerful tool for self-evaluation. So these are all tools or measuring tools or yardsticks of your spiritual assessment. How do you go about assessing yourself spiritually? This is one of the ways. How unaffected you are with the opposites of the world. The world may fit into your mental frame. The world may not fit into your mental frame. The problem is we want the world to fit into our little mental frame, isn't it, all the time? And when the world doesn't fit into it, then you're affected. Even when it fits into it, you're affected. When things happen your way, you're carried away. When things don't happen your way, you're affected. So the capacity to not to identify with the world and to identify with your own self. So where do you get that self-sufficiency or independency? You get that self-sufficiency or independency from the Atman. The only thing that remains unaffected by the world is the Atman. Everything else is affected. The body, the mind, the intellect. The individual is affected because the equipment is affected, but the Atman remains unaffected. So if you identify with the Atman, you remain to that extent unaffected. Like this morning, I go into the, I was having a casual conversation with my friend, and he was saying, my new car has met with not an accident. I was waiting in the traffic light, but an old man came and he couldn't balance himself and he scraped my car. Left side, the whole back portion is scrapped. Almost, uh, I thought he hit him, He felt as if it hit him. He's so affected by that because it's barely 2 months. This is what attachment does. What attachment does is it causes a lot of pain and agony. So detachment is a capacity to be with it, to enjoy it, to be in its association with it, understand it, and keep it in its place. Beyond a point, you will say, I am not it. That's detachment. So I had to tell him, sir, isn't that inevitable? The moment you bring it out of the showroom, you must understand you can't maintain it in condition. So if you want it to maintain in the condition of the showroom, you will have unnecessary stress and worry and anxiety. Isn't it? So it is it's all in your own head. Okay. So this is what we said. We learned in the 7th verse. So let's move on. We'll take verse 8. ज्ञान विज्ञान तृप्तात्मा कूटस्थो विजितेन्द्रियः युक्त इत्युच्यते योगी समलोष्ठाश्मकाञ्चनः ज्ञान विज्ञान तृप्तात्मा कूटस्थो विजितेन्द्रियः युक्त इत्युच्यते योगी samaloshthashmakanchanaha. The yogi who is satisfied with jnana and vijnana, one who is satisfied with truptatma. Truptatma means satisfied with knowledge and wisdom, who remains unshaken. Kutastha. It's a beautiful word, a beautiful Sanskrit word. Kutastha means who is rock-seated, who is unshaken, unmoved. Vijitendriya, who has conquered the senses. Yukta ityuchate yogi samaloshtashmakanchana, to whom a lump of earth, stone, and gold are the same. What a state. To whom a lump of earth, samaloshtashmakanchana, a lump of earth, stone, and gold are same. Such a person is said to be a realized one. Yuktaha, yukta ityuchate, is said to be a realized person. So these are again yardsticks. Again, you can take it from a relative and absolute. To the extent you are established, to that extent you are spiritual. All right? Yes, sir. So the word truptatma, Truptatma, a state, one who is contented. One who is uninfluenced, who is detached. You reach the state of Yuktatma because you have united with the self. You must always understand these two. The level of contentment, the level of where you are uninfluenced or you're detached by the world is directly measured with your attunement with the self. Why are people not contented? Why is there a greed or an avarice in some form or the other? It's not necessarily you may be running behind money, but you may be having greed in many forms, isn't it? Greed can express in many ways, not just for, you can have greed for power, greed for beauty, greed for knowledge. What else you can have greed for? Right, Chima? We can all have greed, isn't it? The greed.
Major thing, money, power, greed for eating.
A person who has greed for eating is called?
Greed for eating.
You can't say greed for eating, no? Or he's greedy, wants more.
There is no satisfaction how much ever he eats, like,
I often keep using the word in the house whenever we are on the dining table. I keep telling, let's practice some yajna spirit. It's not that person who eats first is unmindful whether there's anything left for the other person. So you should be thoughtful and, okay, is it there enough for them? So I keep saying the word yajna, yajna. Let's practice yajna. It starts with that, isn't it? So if someone wants to grab, as the term is glutton, you keep wanting more and more. It's again the same spirit of glutton. What is other areas where this greed functions?
Majority things comes under wealth, power, money and power.
Money and power. Whatever money can exchange with, isn't it?
Yes.
Whatever you can buy with money. So you will not be contented. And why are you not contented?
We are not contented because we look outside for the satisfaction and there is a void. So the more we acquire, the greed is there much more to acquire more and more.
The outside acquisition.
Acquisitions.
The outer acquisition doesn't really offset. See,
The inner
contentment, it doesn't satisfy the inner void, as you said, but it is not the nature of the material world to give you contentment. It is not its svabhava. You must understand it. Everything has a certain nature. Everything has a certain characteristics, isn't it? But it is not the characteristics of the material world to give you satisfaction, contentment. And the spiritual quotient is not measured with your material quotient. It is possible you can have a lot and yet not contented, which is precisely the state many people are. So here he says this yogi is contented, truptatma. He's contented. Why does he get that? Where does he get that contentment from? Is contentment because of the union with the self. So it is the quality or attribute of the self. The nature of the self is it gives you contentment. The nature of the self, it gives you happiness. Now, this is absolute and relative. Now, this verse, he says, this person is samaha. He is detached. He is balanced to the objective differences, to the inert objects, to the things, the differences. Now, firstly, he says, who is satisfied with knowledge and wisdom. Jnanam and Vijnanam. Jnana, Vijnana, Triptatma. Now, how many of you are content with knowledge also? I keep telling many people that my search for knowledge has ended long ago. When I say long ago, my search for knowledge has ended. What I'm really searching for is wisdom. I'm not interested in knowledge anymore. Many people have not saturated themselves with jnanam. So what they do, they keep on acquiring more and more knowledge. They read volumes of literature just to get themselves informed. But any amount of knowledge is no use until it transforms itself into wisdom. So how do you differentiate knowledge and wisdom? What are the factors which differentiate knowledge and wisdom? Let me ask one by one. Give one difference if you can. Just get a few involved. Rajima, what to begin with, what is the difference between knowledge and wisdom?
Guruji, would it be experience of the knowledge, converting it into wisdom?
Experience of the knowledge?
Experiencing the knowledge in such a way to convert it into wisdom. Internalizing.
Okay. So the difference here, what is the difference?
Knowledge can be just information, while wisdom is internalized.
Okay. So knowledge is a mere information. Wisdom is internalized, digested information, which is nothing but it brings about a transformation. Isn't it?
Yes,
so
yes,
to differentiate on one, if you can prepare a column and say on one side is knowledge, other side is wisdom. Knowledge is information, wisdom is transformation.
Yeah.
All right. As Thinkima has rightly said, wisdom is applied knowledge. Yes, once you apply it, once you live it, it becomes wisdom. So wisdom is living it. Knowledge is knowing it. Any other difference between knowledge and wisdom? So your name doesn't reflect, but if I could ask you, how do I identify you, sir? Yes, yourself. Yes, glad. Okay. Your name doesn't reflect there, so it just says iPad.
I am Mohan Prasad, Gayatri's friend.
Oh, right, sir. Most welcome. Good, you can join. Is it your first session today?
Yeah, this is the first session.
All right, good. Glad you can join us.
Thank you.
Have you been following what we are saying, sir?
Today is the first time I'm following a little bit.
Okay. Do you know, or could you attempt to bring out the difference between knowledge and wisdom? Jnanam is knowledge. Vijnanam is wisdom.
Yeah, mostly knowledge is acquiring whatever you want to know, and wisdom is, uh, I mean, implementing what you know. Implementing what you know is more important.
Yes. Implementation of knowledge or application, applied philosophy is wisdom. You're right. Okay. All right. Anybody else? Maniji, can you bring out any more differences between knowledge and wisdom? What's happening, Mani sir?
Me?
Yes, yes.
Guruji? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. When I was working in the Air Force, you see, I had a engineer. He possessed lot of knowledge about the fuel system. But when the problem comes, we go and ask him how to solve this. He will never explain. He will never explain. He has possessed the knowledge, but he doesn't want to give it to anybody else.
Okay.
That's the application of his mind.
So what are you saying? A person,
He acquired the wisdom, all right. He acquired the knowledge, but he doesn't have the wisdom to distribute that knowledge.
sir, I have acquired some knowledge and I'm distributing it to you all. There is no guarantee. There is no guarantee I have wisdom. I'm only trying to clarify because you say that.
Now you got enough knowledge and you are distributing it. You see, you are giving it to
No,
everybody.
that is what. That's what. So don't mistake it and give any more credit to me beyond that. There is no guarantee that there is wisdom. I'm only saying that. Just because one becomes a very vocal, or he's a good orator, or he becomes very pedantic, or he has a few words he can entertain people with, doesn't necessarily construe that you have wisdom. Ilya, correct?
Correct. Yeah, right.
So therefore, but don't go about saying that fellow only has knowledge, no wisdom. I'm only saying possibility da. Just for example's sake. In fact, it is possible that a person may have wisdom, but he doesn't have theoretical knowledge. You must conceive that possibility. It is possible a person may have wisdom, but has no knowledge. It is very much a reality that you have knowledge and no wisdom. That you understand. A lot of people have a lot of knowledge, but no wisdom. There are very few people who have a lot of wisdom, but not necessarily knowledgeable. They're not that informed. They don't have that skill and know-how to be able to convey themselves. Our uneducated grandmothers are. One statement, you have put them all into uneducated category. Yeah, we can
Guruji,
hear you.
Our grandparents were uneducated, but they had a lot of wisdom. They were very, very wise. In fact, the grandfathers who would be very highly educated would learn from the grandmothers, certain tricks, certain mantras. It doesn't, you don't, like you said, Guruji, you don't have to be knowledgeable to be wise.
Yeah, correct. Or very good point. And Harishji, you made a beautiful point. Yes, Harishji.
Hari Om Guruji. Once
Yes,
again,
sir.
repeating what I've heard. So they say knowledge is the ability to say I know, meaning you acquire knowledge so you can say I know this. But wisdom gives you the ability to say I don't know. That means you understand the limitations of your knowledge. So where knowledge ends, and then when you go beyond that, that's where wisdom starts.
Yes. So wisdom is humility, isn't it? Knowledge makes you arrogant. Wisdom makes you humble, which you say, I do not know. There's so many realms you do not know. So you bow down to areas of where you do not know. You may know a lot, but you don't show it off. Correct. So that's another difference. Anything else? So knowledge is tuition. Wisdom is intuition. Knowledge is the process. Wisdom is the end. Knowledge is the raw material. Wisdom is the finished product. Knowledge is knowing. Wisdom is living. Knowledge is temporary. Wisdom is permanent. Knowledge is externally infused. Wisdom is internally cultivated. So these are the few differences between knowledge and wisdom, which is, so he says, one who is satisfied in both. Where there is knowledge, your mind is still immature. When you have wisdom, it brings about maturity, which is compared to a milk which is fluid, and once the milk gets set, it becomes yogurt, and then you extract ghee, butter, isn't it? A beautiful analogy we learned in Atma Bodha, isn't it? So with all the knowledge, you will still have your worries and anxieties. You can be very knowledgeable of the Gita, you can be very knowledgeable of all the Shastras, you're well informed, but you still have the vagaries of the mind. You'll still have the worries and anxieties. You'll still have your attachments. You'll still have your problems. No different. But moment you have wisdom, your mind becomes mature. Your mind becomes calm and composed. You must see this difference. Yeah, Sitaramji, you want to say something?
On a more practical level, I've been learning how to cook for my wife. And so she gives me lots of recipes. And I realized that, following the recipe, which is just information or knowledge. But when I start doing it, I realized that I get into a jam many a times because I don't know exactly how things work. But once I do it a couple of times, then I realize that, yes, now I have the experience that I can apply that information more wisely. And it works in a slightly different fashion also. That when I have 10 recipes to cook and I have gone through the experience of cooking all these, when I get into a jam, I can bank on my experience of the other recipes and to see as to how to get out of my mistake that I created. That's the wisdom I get by applying it.
Yeah.
So just information itself doesn't help. Unless you do it yourself, you know what problems occur and how to come out of those problems. I think that's the wisdom I get out of applying it sometimes. By applying it on many occasions, but experience gives me the wisdom to see how to go about doing it properly. And which I think to a large extent is the same thing like reading the Bhagavad Gita or the Bhajam Govindam, that the verses have enormous amount of meaning, the information which but applying it in real life is where the wisdom, after applying it in real life, realize the wisdom. Otherwise, it's just information. This very context that we're talking of, what's the difference between knowledge and wisdom? I know a lot about reading it, but can I apply it? How do I apply it? What are the pitfalls? Only comes when I start doing manana and chintan about it, and then the difficulties start emerging.
Correct. Very true. So people are giving you the motivation. No, I remember only one time in my life I had to cook because Vijaya was away. I was in Malaysia those days. She was in India, and she was away for a couple of months. Then no way you could eat outside beyond a meal or two. It's not something you are comfortable with. And then I remember I took notes how to make the basic things, and the entire the wall was only with post-its. Step 1, step 2, step 3, and once the one paper fell off, so I went. I thought that's the third step, is the second step, but then I couldn't eat myself. So it's like that. Nothing thereof, no wisdom. So that was the only time I tried. Then I surrendered to my students. I said, please help me. And then lovely food came every day to the house. Now, the most important exercise which bridges the gap between knowledge and wisdom is, as Sitaramji said, it is the chintana, it is the reflection, the process of reflection and absorption of the knowledge, which is done in the early hours between 4 a.m. and 6 a.m. That's the time you become wise, when you absorb and personalize the knowledge. And when that personalization of the knowledge doesn't happen, information remains as information. Information is actually burdening you. Remember, we spoke at once that where you have knowledge, you develop guilt, isn't it? You all relate to that concept. Remember the concept? Where there is knowledge comes guilt. Jama, you remember the context?
Yes, Guruji. When we don't apply the knowledge, then that pricks you, because you have the knowledge and you are not practically following it. So that that gives rise to guilt.
Yes, but it's not necessary that every time you gain knowledge, you develop guilt, isn't it?
No, when you don't apply.
No. Okay, when does knowledge develop guilt? When you don't apply it.
Yeah, when you go against the knowledge, or you have the, for example, Guruji. Yes, Guruji.
See, just because I have learned something, does guilt immediately follow it?
No, Guruji. Supposing you have knowledge that you have to exercise, it's good for the health and for the doctor has advised you, and then you don't follow the advice, then you have the knowledge that you have to exercise, and when you do not exercise, you carry a guilt. That's what I'm saying.
So, yes. So when you do not put that knowledge into practice, means when there is lack of effort, it's not in as much as a transformation. The moment you put an effort towards reaching wisdom, instantly guilt goes.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yes, Guruji.
So, so it's important to understand that where knowledge, when knowledge is not put through the process to gain wisdom, if you don't do your part, knowledge becomes a burden. Because knowledge is only raw material. It's no use to you. It's like you buy the groceries and vegetables, you need to process it through cooking to eat. That processed food is, or food when it's gone through the process becomes food you can eat. You can't serve pulses and grains to your guests and raw vegetables and say, please eat. No, you'll have to put through them through a process. Sitaramji, again, you have raised your hand. Is it your old hand you've raised or a new hand?
The new one.
Oh, yes. Yes.
I just wanted to mention in Bhajagovindam, which is one of my favorite really, is the opening stanza, and which of course gets repeated every second verse, which is, Bhajagovindam, Bhajagovindam, Govindam Bhajamumute, Samprapte Sannahite Kale, Naini Rakshati, Dukrin Karne. That Dukrin Karne means that's the knowledge, the information and knowledge portion. It doesn't help you at the end. What will help you in the end is the wisdom of having internalized whatever you learned.
Yes. But how much of that wisdom we have is a question. That's the real thing. And it's also interesting that wisdom is contained in the knowledge. You don't get wisdom anywhere else. Don't say wisdom comes through experience. No, wisdom is there in the knowledge itself. But if it is left unprocessed, it will remain as information. When you subject the knowledge through a particular process, you extract wisdom. It's like you have, what are the oils you extract? Vijaya?
Groundnut.
Groundnut. Okay, one example is groundnut. So there is oil in the groundnut, isn't it? But you need to extract it through a process, isn't it? So the wisdom here is the groundnut oil. But the raw material is the groundnuts. Any other oil?
Till.
What is till? You must speak in my language.
Sunflower.
Huh? Where do you get sunflower oil from?
Sunflower seeds.
See, sunflower seeds, you get sunflower oil. And then what else oil? Jayashrima is saying, yes, Jayashrima.
Coconut oil.
So you get till oil, coconut oil. So you're trying to only differentiate between the raw material and the product, the produce that you get from it. So the wisdom also is contained in the knowledge, but you can't stack up with mere raw material and don't put through the process. The process is pratasmarami, early morning you got to reflect. And knowledge is given by the guru, wisdom is acquired by the student. No guru can give you wisdom. Don't delegate it to any guru, please. A guru's job is only to give his wisdom in the process, in the means of knowledge to you. He conveys that wisdom through information to you, which comes across to you as information, but it is his wisdom which is your information. You got to make it your wisdom through the process. No, he doesn't say all these things, but the moment he says satisfied in knowledge and wisdom, you must know all these differences. Please capture them all, and then perhaps it can come out in the takeaways we do, the difference, all the differences between the knowledge and wisdom. Who remains unshaken, who is not affected, who has conquered the senses. He has conquered the senses because he has no value for sensual pleasures. He has risen above the mere carnal pleasures, the mere satisfaction of satisfying his eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and skin. He's not interested in them. He's risen above them. Therefore, he has a perfect mastery over his senses. To whom a lump of earth, stone, and gold are the same. When you are satisfied with this knowledge and wisdom, earth, stone, and gold are the same. Annapurnama, which is the most valuable of the three?
Wisdom.
Ayyo. I'm asking, what is more valuable between earth, stone, and gold?
Gold. Gold,
So,
Guruji.
gold. See, there are two eras you can take, a modern view and an ancient view. In the modern times, what is the most valuable?
Earth is maybe. Earth maybe.
Earth means soil.
Yes, Guruji. Like where in cities and all the builders, buy and make money, make a lot of money, construction business. So earth may be more valuable than gold itself.
So you are talking earth in the sense of a piece of land, but earth here means soil. See, perhaps it has a very a certain perspective you can take to it. For example, the ancient times, what was very valuable was land, earth, because they used to cultivate, isn't it? And stone had a mediocre value, and gold had no value. Isn't it?
Yes,
Ancient
Guruji.
times. So ancient times, people had no value for gold. In the modern times, people have a lot of value for gold and vis-a-vis less value for other things. So whichever be the era. So this was perhaps what was application during times of Krishna? No value for gold and diamonds. Modern era, there's more value for gold and diamonds. Whether be then or now, you view all of them the same, whether it is something which is most valuable or least value to you, you look at them the same. How is it possible?
Because a person with wisdom has conquered all desires and he has no value. He doesn't attach value for worldly things, materials. So he views everything in the same manner.
It is truly a sign of wisdom where you don't see. There's a couple who lived a very successful life, and they decided enough is enough. Let's embark on a spiritual journey. So story goes, both the husband and wife give up everything liquidated the assets, distributed the wealth to whomever they had to, and with just bare minimum, whatever they need to survive, they took off into the woods just to go find some ashram somewhere and live. So there was a point where there was a steep hill apparently. So the husband was walking ahead and the wife, she was lagging behind a few meters apart. And the lady saw the husband trying to, he was sort of playing, covering up the soil with his feet. And by the time his wife caught up with him and asked this, what are you doing? No, nothing, it's okay, it's okay. No, so you were trying to do something with the soil. What we're trying to do? To which she said, the husband said, no, I found something glittering. I thought it was a piece of gold ring. And I'm just trying to cover up with soil just to ensure that you don't get distracted with it. And again, we start samsara collecting things. To which apparently she said, you still see a difference between gold and stone? The husband saw the difference and wanted to cover it up. For her, she said, she doesn't see a difference between a piece of stone or gold. So whether it is value or no value, you will have no value because you have risen above it. So a yogi who is satisfied with knowledge and wisdom, who remains unshaken, who has conquered the senses, to whom a lump of earth, stone, and gold are the same, such a person is said to be realized. Now, use this to measure and evaluate where you stand. All of these qualities. No, that doesn't mean you empty your locker, put all the gold outside and put all rocks and stones in your thing. You only said, Guruji, both are the same, no? You don't land up in trouble and don't get me in trouble. But how do you evaluate? How much percentage you will give yourself? Ushama, satisfied knowledge and wisdom remains unshaken, conquered the senses.
Namaste, Guruji. I'm slowly getting into that Maul, Guruji, just now. So, trying to.
But you should, we all should start looking at ourselves through these windows.
Yes.
So that you are able to evaluate yourself, understand where we're coming from, isn't it?
Yes, Guruji. Yes, Guruji.
Right. Okay. Right, let's move on. Let's take verse 9. Surhan mitra yudasinaha madhyasthadveshya bandhushu sadhushvapi cha papeshu samabuddhir vishishyate. Suhran mitra yudasinaha madhyasthadveshya bandhushu sadhushvapi cha papeshu samabuddhir vishishyate. He who has equal regard for the good-hearted, Suhrun, friend, mitra, a foe, one who is indifferent, who is neutral, who is hateful, who is righteous and unrighteous, sa vishishyate, he excels. Now, in the earlier verse, he spoke about how he is the same to inert objects and things. Here, he talks about how this person is equal to the different types of beings. Samabuddhi, equal regard. And he mentions 9 categories of people here. Just to give you an idea of the classifications of people, it is not exhaustive, but it is good enough to give you an idea as to what are the different types of people. He who has equal regard for one. Now, there are 9 qualities. Yes, Hariji. Can we have the audience back, please? So he gives 9 types of people. From 1 to 10, he talks of the material classifications of people from 1 to 7, and 8 and 9 are the spiritual classifications of people. So classifies them as good and bad. So the first are Suhrun. Suhrun means the good-hearted. The good-hearted are the people who would do potentially good to you. Evil-minded, Dveshya, they are potentially bad. Potentially good, potentially bad. Friend, Mitra. Mitra is one who manifests that goodness towards you. Arihi means a foe who manifests his evil towards you. So potential good, potential bad, who manifests good, who manifests bad. Udasinaha, who's indifferent, may do good or may do evil. Don't know, no guarantee. 6th is the neutral, Madhyastha. He will neither do good, neither do bad. Funny character. Madhyastha. You will have to come up with characters in your mind or the types of people you have met in your life, so that you understand and start compartmentalizing them. And 7th, he says, Bandhuhu, a relative. He means to do good and he does it. So the first 7 are the different classifications, the material level. And then the 8th, he says, Sadhu. Sadhu refers to the righteous people, the sattvic people. They follow the spiritual path. Then here are the people who are working for others' welfare. You'll also find such people who are only interested in the welfare of others. They're leading a life of spirituality, austerity, a sattvic life. And the 9th, he says, the papi, papeshu, the unrighteous fellows, the non-spiritual people. They're only interested in their own welfare. Atma Karanat. They think of themselves all the time. Now, when you go into the world, you will meet these 9 categories and more. It's not exhaustive. Some people are grateful to you. Some people are ungrateful to you. Some people are hypocritical. So you can add to the list. Ilya, enna vasantama, correcta? Vera edavadhu add pannalama?
I can't think of any more examples. I think all types of people have been included, Guruji.
Included. Yes, you're right. In fact, it is quite an exhaustive thing. But even if you can add, please add. Feel free. But what is the end? What is the end message for us from this verse?
That we should look at each one of the same attitude. We should look at each one of them, each type of people. You
see each one of them equally. Now, how do you do that? How is it possible? Can you give us, see, this is a state. He says he sees them equally. But how do we put it into practice? How do we look at these people equally when such people come with their personalities towards us, when they present themselves either a friend or a foe or a good-hearted or an indifferent or evil-minded or like a sadhu? How do you look them equally?
We just have to keep reaffirming to ourselves and that such people exist and we have to accept the way they are. When you tell yourself that, then probably you can slowly develop that attitude of same attitude towards each one of them. Give no value to what they throw at you.
Very true. Very well said. Don't give a value to what they bring to the equation or what they throw at you. It's what you can bring to the equation, isn't it? Because don't let your responses be determined by what they bring in, isn't it?
Yes.
But the ultimate thing is to see the Atman in them, but it is
That's difficult.
it is unrealistic, isn't it? Given where we are, it is difficult to see the Atman. So the practical applicability is to understand each one's nature as they are, isn't it?
Yes.
And then, as you said, to be able to accept them to be what they are, not what you want them to be. And it's not easy. See, moment you accept someone to be what they are, what happens?
Sometimes you're taken for granted also.
Example?
No, if you accept how they are, they go even a step further to, if it is a foe, to go a step further also to have more enmity. So
I'm not able to follow you, Ma. Sorry.
No, suppose you accept them the way they are, mentally you accept.
Okay.
You are okay. You accept but the opposite person may keep on increasing his enmity or anger or whatever towards you. So the other person might think he can take you for granted.
Ma, doesn't your relationship with that person depend on your assessment of the person?
Yes, as far as I am concerned, our relationship is that way. But the other person has also to understand from the same point of view. No, he will not understand.
Okay, let's say the person doesn't understand. But how does it mean that you become are you suggesting that you become a victim of their actions?
Sometimes, yes.
Then, Ma, can you just take example of an animal kingdom. When you look at a carnivore, let's say you look at a tiger or you look at a wolf or a poisonous snake. When you know the nature of the poisonous snake, that a poisonous snake is true to its nature, would you be careless in handling it or dealing with it? Or would you be extremely cautious?
Would be extremely cautious.
But if you continue to say that, oh, I know it's a poisonous snake, yet I ended up being stung by it.
No, we wouldn't do that.
When you say, I know its nature, and yet I got stung by it, means who is to be blamed? You blame the snake or yourself?
Yourself.
Yourself, isn't it?
So if you become a victim also, so it is your own.
Absolutely. You have not dealt with that person. The way you relate to different people is based on their personalities, but that doesn't mean you hate them. You may go, if you go into a a zoo, you are allowed to enter certain cages of certain animals. You can go and pat them. But you will not take a chance with a cobra. You know, you will admire it from a distance. You'll admire a carnivore from a distance. You look at a tiger and say how majestic it is from a distance. You would not dare go near it. But you can go and pat a deer or a lamb, or you'll hold a tortoise in your hand or a rabbit. You would do that. Why? Not that you like them and don't like them. No, you like everything same. They're all beautiful animals of distinct characteristics. But your relationship changes because of your distinct understanding of their nature. So, so coming back to it, so the first thing we should understand is each one is helplessly functioning according to their nature. All we can do is accept them what they are, ensure you don't develop an animosity towards them. So there is no hatred towards them. Isn't it?
Yes.
To see the Atman is a long way ahead, isn't it? Ilya? Ultimately, we got to see the Atman. The equality comes because the common denominator is Atman. But how do you relate to it and see equally and remain balanced? And you don't have a preferential relationship or approach to anyone. You treat everyone same. Isn't it?
Yes.
No preferential. Equanimous. And when would you have a no preferential relationship? Or rather, let me ask someone, when does one end up having a preferential relationship? Padmanima, when would you have a preferential relationship with someone?
I think my preference or not, it depends on if I am affected by it, whether I am affected by what happens. Otherwise, I will look at it as a judge, listen to all, and then I come out with my own views. But the previous thing, like how to treat everybody alike, it's something very difficult. In my case, I would definitely shun such people with whom we cannot tolerate or it is difficult to get along. Whether at workplace or anywhere. Because no, it's simply wasting of your time. A dog can only bark. You can just ignore them and then carry on with your deeds. Rather than barking back, because I don't know how to bark. I can only talk. So there are people, different types of people, they behave according to their nature. So that doesn't mean that I can love everyone alike.
Ma, just because, see what, many a time we think loving someone means expressing that feeling. Like you would like to see a king cobra. You would also like to see a rabbit. But your expression of your feeling towards a king cobra and a rabbit is different, isn't it?
That's what I said. You cannot go near and.
But you can't. But don't have to hate a king cobra because it's poisonous. That is its nature. You can't have an animosity or ill feeling or some kind of a negativity towards a person who is barking because he's barking. That is his dharma. That is his vasanas. What have you got to do with it? So the ultimate thing we have to keep in mind when we meet this very people is there is no negativity or animosity in my mind, in my heart. My heart is pure. So
Yeah, that's what I said. You don't have to hate them, but you can ignore them, or you can just keep away from them.
Yes, very much. You can keep away from them, you can ignore them, but as long as you don't identify with that quality and keep your mind at rest, at pure.
Yeah. You get disturbed, no, when such things happen, because we are all human beings. Though you are wise to understand that, yeah, you should not take all these things to your heart. There will be some disturbance in your mind, at least for some time. Maybe time will heal it.
But here we are expecting wisdom to heal, not time to heal.
Wisdom comes from, it follows. That is what I said, time. Time is needed to make you wise. Because
No, we discussed that wisdom is in the knowledge. Wisdom is not in the time. I know where you're coming from. I'm just trying to push in the understanding how important it is.
It is important. What I'm saying is, for a common man, it will not dawn on you all on a sudden. So that's the time factor is there. That is why people become more wise when they get older.
Your entire life is consumed. Then you become wise.
No.
I'm not party to that.
No. Older in the sense, every experience teaches you something. So it is up to you whether to which path to choose. There you become wise. Every step makes you wiser. And it becomes part of your life.
Certainly. Wisdom can either be gained through knowledge or experience or a combination of both. 3 avenues. We can't rule out all these 3 possibilities. That's all is being suggested. You can become wise through this knowledge and wisdom. You will become wise through experience, and experience teaches us the bitterness. It's very bitter. Experience can be very bitter. Ideal is where you have knowledge and you have a little experience, and you gain wisdom that way as well, isn't it? So it is important that all of us live lives, seen lives a little bit, and then when you are given this wisdom or this knowledge, you are able to have a very convincing understanding how this knowledge is, where it's placed, where it should be placed in life. So it is a mixture of knowledge and experience that's important. Experience alone is fatal. Knowledge alone is useless. So have this knowledge and go out into the world to experience it, experiment it, and you see how it works. Therefore, this knowledge was taught in the olden days, much before you got into the arena of life. So you had all the works. So you would not take chances with life. You would follow, as it were, the beaten path. Take the path of wisdom, what has been laid down by great men. But yet explore life, experience life, give it a fresh perspective. But you want to implement these values to ascertain the truth and make it your own. And when this knowledge element is absent, then you say time heals. Yes, we all make mistakes, and then over a period of time, we don't remember all that has happened in our lives. But if you allow time to heal, that means you paid the price of experience, of inability to handle it, isn't it? We don't remember what has happened in our past. Yes, the apohanam, that forgetfulness is there. Anyway, a few comments have come by. I've not touched on it, but as Gayatri Ma said, when we are in tune with one's own expectations, we are preferential. Yeah, I asked a question, when does one become preferential? Is when you are selfish, when you have an expectation. That's when your relationship is preferential. But now you see the difference. Verses 7 and 8, he spoke about one who is equal to material things, whether a lump of earth, stone, or gold. And here he sees to all beings. And from the next verse onwards, verses 10 to 18, he talks about the external and the internal disciplines for meditation. Now look at it. Here we are on a chapter called Dhyana Yoga. He's talking about meditation in this chapter. In the first 9 verses, he talks about all that you need to be qualified before even he talks about the procedural details, all the disciplines required. So without all these qualifications, it is rather detrimental to just plunge into meditation. It just gives you a clear perspective as to how you must approach it. Harish, you want to say something? Anything to share? All right, sir. We will come back. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha. Hari Om.